Hello, everybody. I'm Liz, and it is wonderful to be here at South by Southwest. I'm so excited to talk to you today, Sumbul. I'm a huge fan of everything you're doing at Apple, and a huge fan of you personally.
Well, that is very kind. I am very honored to be here as well, and I'm a huge fan of everything you do. And I was just sharing, I'm a huge reader of women's health, so it's such an honor to have this conversation, and it's an honor to be here with all of you.
Amazing. Always love to find people who read women's health. I am going to just own it that I am reading my questions from my brand new iPhone 14 Plus. This is the new yellow iPhone. I know this sounds like a commercial, but sorry, I do love it and need to tell everybody. This is available for order starting today, and you will be able to get it later this month in March. So.
And I don't have one yet.
I know. The person who works at Apple does not have the phone that I do. I feel incredibly lucky today. So, Sumbul, we have something in common in that our careers started in a different place than where they are right now. You have an incredibly unique perspective, having been a practicing physician, and now you are really working at the intersection of technology and health. Can you share a little bit about that path?
Yeah, I definitely think life is definitely not a straight line, and I have lived that to a T. I started my career thinking I was going to be doing something very different. I actually thought I was going to be a journalist at one point, and that didn't work out. But the journey for me has been really focused on how do you have impact and how do you have a meaningful impact. And I did start my career actually thinking that I wanted to work in media and communications. And as I learned more about myself and what was important to me, I started thinking about what I wanted to do, but then, and really reevaluating some of my decisions. But then in 2001, as I've shared with you, I had a family member who had a life-threatening event. My mother fell very ill, and that was a really pivotal time for me. And that's when I decided that I was so grateful for all of the help I had received at that time by the amazing medical team. But I remember feeling really helpless at that time. And I also remember a piece of advice that one of the physicians gave me that basically said, you have to advocate for your mom because since she can't right now, and you need to make sure that you empower yourself and her to make the decisions that are right for her health. And that's really what led me on my journey to become a physician, not wanting to ever feel helpless. And ultimately, that's actually also what drove my decision to move into technology, because the ability to use technology at scale so that people can be empowered so they don't ever feel that helpless, and really truly be in the driver's seat of their own health is incredibly important. And that's what's driven me to make some of the changes I've made in my career and feel really lucky to be able to do that.
That's so awesome. You shared that story actually in the pages of Women's Health not so long ago. I think I even referenced it on my editor's letter because it really resonated with me. I think it's so beautiful when you can take a life experience that's really challenging and in some ways traumatic and use that and leverage it to do good in the world and to help so many people. So that's pretty awesome. My story is dramatic in a different way. After college, I was actually an analyst in investment banking, of all things. I've always been interested in business and took a lot of economics classes in college. But mostly it just felt like a good job with a solid salary and kind of what I was supposed to do next. And I did not feel lit up by it. I sort of started dreading going to work, and I did not know what to do with myself. I ended up signing up for a marathon just because I needed to find some happiness and joy and a challenge that lit me up outside of work. And it was through that and talking to strangers on long runs in Central Park that I started to articulate out loud what I really cared about in life and is passionate about. I grew up playing sports. I've always loved fitness and health. There are a lot of health providers in my family. My older brother is a heart surgeon. He's a cardiothoracic surgeon. And through talking to them, I realized that's what I'm passionate about. I didn't go to medical school. That's not where this story goes. But it was sort of the moment when I began to network and learn about journalism and being a health journalist. And it took a minute and some stars aligning and a lot of hard work. But it's been now 20 years that I've been in this space. And for me, helping women live happier, healthier lives, which is what I am passionate about. I'm now able to do that every single day. So I know this isn't a career talk, but I do think it's important to acknowledge that the things that the missions you have personally can help so many people when you make that your professional drive as well.
I totally agree with that. And I think you're giving back in a way, a piece of yourself in that journey. And that's kind of what I really believe in, is that it's so important to give back every day. And how do you find work that allows you to marry that? And the other thing that you just talked about that I think is incredibly important too is when you find what you're passionate about and what you truly love, one, to your point, it's through a lot of hard work, but that's also the opportunity to really like make impact and hopefully change people's lives. And I think that's what drives a lot of us. So I love that story because it totally resonates with me.
Thank you. All right, we are going to move on for a second to Apple Watch. I have the Apple Watch Ultra. Again, this is not product placement. These are, I remember the first Apple Watch. I vividly remember because my youngest son, George, was born just a few days before it became available. Oh, no He turns 8 at the end of March. So I have been wearing this device for so long and have seen it evolve over the years and have used it in different ways. I know that the health and fitness features, they've sort of, it like blows my mind thinking about where we were and where we are now. And I wondered if you could kind of take us behind the curtain. How much is already on the roadmap? Did Apple and you know back when George was born where this was going? And can you tell us where it's going next?
It's a really great question. It's such a good question because I think, especially with what's going on in technology and health right now, I think a lot of people assume that we sat in a room and we're like, okay, we want to tackle health. And that's actually absolutely not the way it happened. We were not that planful about it, actually. It was very organic. And so what happened was when we introduced the watch, we wanted to make sure that we were really accurate with our calorie estimates. And so one of the things about Apple that I love is that we are so focused on the science and the accuracy behind what we put out there that it actually traces back to even that time where we had actually introduced heart rate and put heart rate on the watch just to make sure that the calorie calculation was actually accurate. And so what happened was, just by virtue of wearing a watch on your wrist all the time, when people started wearing it, and I also think the other powerful thing about watches, it's the same device that lets you text, you can check your email, you can see how many steps you walked, but also does all these other things. And I don't think people would just wear a heart rate monitor. So by the fact that people were wearing the watch, we started to get letters, and we literally get letters almost every day from customers, where they shared with us, hey, I was wearing my watch and I noticed my heart rate was elevated. And I went to the doctor and it turned out I had AFib, or it turned out I had an infection. And so when that happened, we said, okay, we should pull on that thread a little bit. And so that's when we actually introduced high heart rate detection, which is the threshold. If you set it above a certain rate, 110, 120, 130, you'll get a notification if you're sitting at rest. And we got even more letters, actually. So we got more letters saying, hey, I was sitting on the couch and my heart rate was elevated. I went to the doctor and they told me if I hadn't come in, I probably would have ended up in a much worse condition. A lot of that ended up being around atrial fibrillation, quite a bit. We had a few people who had issues with just coronary artery disease. And then also, again, some really moving stories. I'll share one in particular. One woman, I'll never forget this story, and this will totally resonate with you. She was pregnant, and her high heart rate alert went off. She ended up being in thyroid storm, which can be life-threatening, not just to the mom, but to the fetus as well. And she went into the hospital, and it is because of that notification that both her and her fetus were saved. So, I mean, it's pretty remarkable. She's with, the letter puts you into tears when you read it. And so then we introduced low heart rate detection because we're like, okay, if we're doing high heart rate, we should introduce low heart rate. And that's what led to our explorations around doing rhythm. So as you know, with heart rate, it's how fast you may be beating, but it's also how regular you're beating. And that's what led to our work around irregular heart rhythm notification and ECG. we continued to pull on that thread, and we introduced cardio fitness, and then we started expanding into other areas like women's health, walking steadiness, fall detection. But the point that I just want to leave you with is that we truly let our users kind of drive a little bit of our explorations. Obviously, we also let the technology drive. We don't do technology for technology's sake. And that's really important. What we really look at is how can we leverage the technology to provide actionable insights that are grounded in science and that we can deliver it with privacy being at the core of everything we do. And that's really kind of like has been our journey. So that's kind of where we landed. And the one thing I'd love to ask you, because I'm sure you must hear from users all the time too, is how does that drive your work?
Yeah, thank you for asking. And it's funny, I do have to share, even before we walked onto stage, folks who are producing this amazing event at South by Southwest are like telling you their own personal health stories, how it's affected them personally and their parents. So you must get that all over the world. Like, what an amazing thing to hear firsthand how the technology that you're working on every day is meaningfully impacting their health and happiness.
It is one of the most favorite things of what we do, and it really just touches you because that's that impact we were talking about.
100%. On my side, yes, similarly, we have goals and a mission as a brand, which I keep saying, to help women live healthier, happier lives, but we very much rely on our readers to guide us and to tell us what they're thinking about and what's resonating with them and what questions they have. I would say, the way that I interact with readers is, first of all, I still get snail mail, like actual letters in the mail, which I love so much.
We do too, which is awesome.
They're so great to see somebody's handwriting. I love opening those. And, in the world we live in, what a rare thing to like write a handwritten letter. They really cared. But we get comments across social media. Like literally we'll do an Instagram post and I'm always watching to see what the comments are there. People will direct message us, and yes, it's a real human who sits behind the account. It's not a robot, But also we have all this data on what stories they're reading on our digital platform. We have the print publication, we have our social platforms, we have video, we have events. The site gets millions and millions and millions of users every day, and it's not every day. I wish that was true. Every month. So we can see in real time what's resonating with readers, how much time they're spending on the story. Are they taking an action from it? Are they following a link? Which is a great way to get insight into where our readers' heads are and hearts are. And I would say our mental health content, it all resonates in different ways, but I've been particularly inspired by how much women want to talk about that and share about that and are asking for more content. We really believe in destigmatizing that conversation. Yep. Mental health has always been at the core of our brand, which turns 20 years old next week. Not why did I say that? Next year. In 2024. But really over the past 5 years, we've made it more of a content pillar and are adding more content every day. I also just want to share one story that really touched me, and I think will touch a lot more women, which is a woman named Christina Miner who had the BRCA2 breast cancer gene and elected to have a double mastectomy. She also decided not to have reconstructive surgery of her breasts. And there's a growing movement of a community of women called the Flatties who make that bold and courageous decision. We told that story across our platforms and took some really beautiful pictures of Christina. We try so hard to make the women that we feature in our pages and across our site feel safe and comfortable. And she did, and so she got really vulnerable. That has reached so many thousands of women, and we're getting so much feedback, gratitude. Also women who are inspired to get mammograms and test themselves and talk to their parents and their grandparents about their family history and learn more about that. That's like an amazing reach that this brave woman, Christina, who went out there and told her story, and because we could amplify it, I think we've been able to change the course of a lot of women's lives. And also to talk about something that can feel like sort of scary and gravitas. We'll be there and hold your hand and go to the dark places with you, but always with, education and science and expert-backed information guiding us and an uplifting, optimistic take on it, that there is a lot of agency and power we have in our own health.
That's amazing. That is really amazing.
Thank you. It actually was just nominated for a National Magazine Award, that piece. So
Congratulations.
thanks.
Wow.
It's nice when, it's all about the readers, but when your peer group recognizes the work too, and it will get more eyes, and even, it will become a bigger story because of that award, which is
That's really
exciting.
special.
Thank you, Sumbul. All right, I am going to switch gears for a minute. As we know, Apple's a consumer technology company. And so we hear a lot about users who go to doctor's appointments and are using the information from this technology on their wrist to make better informed decisions and to help their doctors really understand the landscape of what's happening with their health. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. The way we think about our work in health is that we want it to enrich people's lives. And we also want it to enrich people's relationships. And one of those relationships is your physician. Yeah. Because, just by virtue of being with you every day, and that's an honor when you think about it, we feel like we owe our users and our customers the benefit of really enhancing how we can help them be more effective in these relationships. And if you think about it, like one of the things that's kind of neat about things like ECG is you take photographs as little memories of snapshots of what's going on every day of your life. When you go to the doctors, often you go into the physician, you have a whole life that you live outside of that physician's office, and they're asking you for information about what's going on as you live your every life that might be impacting why you're there that day. So features like, the ECG allow you to take snapshots if there's something going on, for example, with your heart, to be able to kind of serve like that camera in between. But if you think about it from a physician standpoint, like your life is a little bit of a black box. So if we can provide this additional data to be meaningful to you and them, so they have a little bit better sense of how you're sleeping, how you're moving, things that you might notice in your heart rate, your cycle information, all of that is just additive and more information that allows you to be a more informed patient, but hopefully also is helpful to them so they can kind of get through their diagnostic criteria faster or with additional information that'll allow them to be more comprehensive in their conversation and really enrich that conversation. So the way we think about it is, how do we fill in those, spaces in between your life so that you can have a more informed conversation? That also ties to our point on empowerment. It is through that information that we want to empower you to know the right things to ask, but also, again, feel empowered to ask questions about things that you may forget. If you don't have that little list of things, sometimes you forget, and so this is an additional tool to be able to do that. So in any way that we can focus on putting you, the user, at the center of your health and in the driver's seat of your health, even in your relationships with your physicians, we think about that a lot. So for most of our features, we have the consumer-facing feature, but we actually always have a physician-facing feature as well, which is, often our PDF or our physician report that's actually designed by physicians, because the goal is that it's easily glanceable for them so they can get the information they need very quickly, so it's not a burden, but also, again, giving you kind of two sides of the relation, because we really think every relationship in health is you, the customer, and you, the user, but you, the physician, also is part of that health journey, and so we want to make that easier for you to be able to enable.
Thank you for sharing about that. I use this personally. I've shared my data about, I'll just go there. In the spirit of destigmatizing things that are uncomfortable maybe to talk about, and talking to my gynecologist, and there was some wonky stuff happening with my cycle, and I didn't understand it. And I was able to give her months and months and months of information, because I'm doing cycle tracking, to really help her understand what was happening with my body and to make a plan of action for how we should, what to do next, what to try next, which was pretty awesome, because speaking of a black box, I just don't know. You don't know what's going on in your body, but it's tracking everything, which is so helpful. And I guess on the note of reproductive health and women's health, a lot has happened in the past year. May will be the anniversary of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And I know that our readers expressed a lot of concern about data. A lot of them use apps to track their cycle. Now they're using Apple Watches to track their cycle. And fear about, where's this information going and can it be used against me? Can you talk about how Apple thinks about data and privacy?
Yeah, and also maybe just start with how we think about women's health, and then go into how we tackle the data and privacy issue as well. One of the things that we have very thoughtfully done is, if you think about it, women's were not allowed to participate in clinical trials up until about 30 years ago. So that's a pretty recent kind of focus. And women's health is an area that has generally been understudied, underfunded, under-researched. And so we thought, when we were working on our cycle tracking feature, that it was really important not just to introduce the feature, but to actually do a partner companion research study to really enhance the understanding of women's menstrual cycles. Some of you may be aware, but a lot of the data that drives a lot of the guidelines for women's menstrual cycles was done over 60, 70 years ago. And they haven't been, that data set has not been refreshed, which is why we're really excited to partner with Harvard School of Public Health and the NIEHS, who is helping us really research this data. And what we're doing is trying to understand, in addition to women's cycle information, what trends are we seeing, for example, with heart rate for participants, and how does heart rate and your cycle data intersect, and how does the biometrics that you have actually influence your cycles, and vice versa. And just one of the things, for example, in the study, we've uncovered some really interesting learnings. For example, those with PCOS have about 2 times more likelihood to have endometrial hyperplasia. We have a number of individuals who where we're finding is that irregular cycles are more common in certain types of backgrounds than others. And that's really important information, because your cycle is a vital sign ultimately for a woman. And so it is really important to understand what that information tells about you. To your point on privacy, I think one of the things that drives everything we do at Apple and in how we tackle our work, and this is for all of our work and particularly also in health, is that first and foremost, Apple does not have access to a consumer's data. Your data is encrypted on your iPhone with Touch ID, Face ID, or your passcode, and it's on device. If you choose to sync your data to iCloud with 2-factor authentication and a passcode, it is encrypted end-to-end. And again, Apple does not have access to the data, so we cannot see the data. We don't have access to it. When you participate in a research study, that's when you're consenting, and we offer granular control over which data you share and what you choose to share, who you choose to share it with, and when you choose to share it. And that's for all of our features, but for research studies, we also give you that additional level of sharing control, where you get to pick what you would want to participate and share as part of the research study and not. So we really are big believers in transparency, in user control data, and again, privacy being at the core of everything we do. We often will make trade-offs on speed because we believe approaching this space with such care and making sure we pay attention to privacy is so central. And so ultimately, we just don't have access to the data.
That is incredibly reassuring. It was one of the biggest questions I was asked personally and that our readers asked after the big event in September, which I got to come out for on campus to see the reveal of these features and the new watch. So bravo to Apple. Thank you for doing that. I'm curious, do you then mine the findings of these studies to develop new features? Like, are the studies happening now going to determine what Apple puts into the watch in the years to come?
We definitely use the research studies, I would say 3 ways. One, so the way we partner with academic institutions is really, the desire is we work with a principal investigator who is focused on, like, what is the science that we learn and what's generalizable. So we will sometimes just learn things from those studies and publish on them. And that is just purely for generalizable research. The second is sometimes to understand, along back to your user question, is like, what's working with users, what's not, what are areas that we should probably explore further. And then the third is absolutely, we pick up findings from the studies that we say, okay, well, this is scientifically based, so we need to potentially pull on this thread. Because one of the things I want to tie back to the points I made is like, we're focused very clearly on like, if we provide you with an actionable insight, it has to be grounded in science. And we validate all of the algorithms we put out there. All of the work we do is very squarely validated by scientific basis and evidence. And so, for example, I'll just give you some examples. We released cycle deviations this past fall, and that was based upon what our learning that 16% of our participants in the research study in the Apple Women's Health Study had meaningful cycle deviations, and so that drove our decision to be able to include that as a feature. Walking steadiness was based on and designed based on data where we, through the Apple Heart and Move study, had over 100,000 participants where their data was understood about like mobility changes, and then leveraged that to be able to develop the algorithms to be able to notify you if there's changes in your mobility. So we absolutely think about how these things can drive our feature roadmap. But again, it's solving problems that are meaningful, that are actionable, and that where the science really holds up.
That is so awesome. The way we walk, and that it's getting all of that information, that now that's saving lives. These studies, it's so cool. And I must say that every time I interview an expert, like literally no matter what the health topic is, heart health, exercise science, everything under the sun, they acknowledge and are candid about the fact that historically the research has been done on men, and that females are not represented in those studies, and that is something that needs to change. And it's so cool that Apple, because of the watch and because these brave souls are giving their consent, that we have like a meaningful population and data set now for both genders.
Yep.
So thank you for doing that.
Well, of course. And it's an important part of, what we call this is like real world evidence generation. And it's an important part to make sure that you have a diverse population. And so that's something we think about a lot.
100%. And yeah, I must say, like, if we could get Apple Watches in all underserved communities, it could change the world.
Yep.
All right, let's talk for a second about the double-edged sword, shall we call it, of being a super fan like I am of these devices. I'm looking at my watch all the time, like, how did I sleep? What's my heart rate? How long was that workout? Did I meet my activity goal for the day? Which is really fun because I love data, and I think of my body almost as a lab experiment. Our bodies are so cool, and it's really exciting, if you're curious about it, to be able to have information about what's happening inside. However, I can run the risk of becoming a bit overly dependent upon that. If I wake up and feel great, and then I look at my watch and it turns out my sleep, according to it, was not awesome, am I now gonna trudge through my day with a fog, Yep. So how are you thinking about that? The mental health of being so connected and maybe having all this access to data. How do you think about that for all of your customers and users?
We think about it all the time. It's something that ultimately when we approach health, we are big believers in thinking about health holistically, which means the mind-body connection is very important. It's not just about your physical health, it's about your mental health. Your mental health ultimately does impact your physical health. And we do a lot of things within our ecosystem that may not look like they're health features, but ultimately actually, have that intention. And so what I mean by that is our goal is actually to not have you attached to your device all the time. So we've done a lot of things to really make individuals aware of how they're using their technology. From a holistic health perspective and a mental health perspective, we want people to be intentional about how they're using their technology. And so things like focus mode. So, being able to really put your device kind of on hold, on focus mode, so it screens notifications so that you can actually take some time away from your device is really important, and something that we were big believers in. And that was that intention of being intentional about how to use your technology.
And I love focus mode. You can actually preset it,
yes.
So it kicks in. So you don't have to be in the moment and say, oh, I feel like I'm really frazzled and too connected to my device, turn it on. That's what I do. I just make it go on. So I'm sort of forced into that
Exactly.
distance from my
When
device.
I drive up my driveway, it has my home. Obviously I have my home, so it'll ask me if I want to go into focus mode because I'm going to be home with my family, right? And so those are the type of things that we want you to be intentional because of the overall holistic impact. There's also screen time. We want people to be aware of how often they're actually using their screens. And so to your point on the health features and like over indexing on data, the way we think about it is, if you notice, every health feature we release, we actually put a lot of time into the education that comes along with it, so our articles. And interestingly, and you would actually appreciate this as an editor, our articles are actually one of the most visited aspects of our health app. People really love, because it's what we do is we take very complicated topics and present it in a clinically valid but Apple-like voice. Conversational. And so what we find is that when we think a lot about how does the data not alarm you? How does it not give you anxiety? How do we inform you but also lead you to education? Because I really do think that the more you educate individuals about their health and understanding what this data means, the easier it is for you to step back and say, okay, I don't need to stress about it. This is something that's actually additive. And so that piece of basically what I'm getting at is the education and the content is really important.
Amen, yes.
Along with the features. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about that. And it's also how we present information, the language you see, the words. We sweat the details so you don't have to. We spend a lot of time thinking about the colors we choose, the language we use, the words we use to really be not alarming, but actually be informative.
Oh, you are speaking my language. This is what we think about every single day at Women's Health, too. Even that story I was sharing about Christina, who underwent, her mastectomy and elected not to do reconstruction. That topic can be sensitive and challenging for readers to engage with. And it's our job as editors to make it approachable, to educate, to make it science-backed, and to make it not scary.
Absolutely.
That's the whole goal. So you can learn and realize, again, that you have agency. We don't want readers turning away because they feel alarmed. We don't want to be ever fear-mongering. And we've really, because of what the world has been through with the pandemic and so many other things, that is our great challenge and opportunity, like every single day. I also love that you shared about like the colors that you're using, the font you're using, the word choice. Yes, we sweat that so much. The words and the visuals totally matter.
It totally does. And we spend a lot of time also thinking about how does this information that we're providing you actually help you understand how to focus on prevention and being proactive around your health. Because you know this, it's small steps every day that you can take that will ultimately lead to better overall health. You don't need to change everything all at once. But often in health and healthcare, we often think about our health once something calamitous happens. We don't think about it every day. And so the goal is, like, if the biggest thing we can do is get you thinking about your health every day so you're proactively focusing on it in a healthy way, that's really what our goal is. And so to that end, the education is really important. One of the other things that we started to do, which you may or may not be aware of, but we show connections and trends with other aspects of your lifestyle. So for example, for our AFib burden feature, for those who have AFib, what we've done is we actually show you what your sleep is and how that might be, what your AFib burden could be at those times, how your mobility could impact that. Because what we're trying to get at is that health, again, is holistic. So your sleep, your mobility, your heart health are all interconnected. And so we're really thinking about, with the focus on prevention, like how does your lifestyle potentially impact your health, and starting to surface that in more different ways. And so that's something also that we're we spend a lot of time thinking about.
That's so cool. I didn't know that you're layering all that data on so people can make those connections. And yes, if you look at the holistic health picture, it's about moving your body. It's about the foods that you're putting in your body. And it's also about social connection and your mental health and how you're managing stress. And all of those things are weaving together constantly. There's no like magic bullet or you're really good at one, but not, struggling in another. The goal is to take those tiny steps every day in each of those pillars.
Exactly. And even like on our highlight and trends, if you look at your highlight and trends, we know when, for example, I was just sharing with Liz, like I was traveling, so my sleep hours have gone down compared to prior weeks. But even when we present to you, what your trends are, whether positive or negative, we want them to be informative and sometimes celebratory, not ever punitive. And so that's always the thing that we pay a lot of attention to in terms of how we present that data.
I definitely get that. I am a proud lover of gold stars, and my watch and phone reward me, and it helps keep my momentum. Yeah. It's awesome. I love earning my badges.
Closing your rings.
Closing my rings. Oh, it's the best. What I don't love, speaking of this mental health and being overly connected, I have to admit, I do have the screen time set up, so I get it's funny. For me, maybe this is for everybody, I run with my dog on Sunday mornings in the park, and I listen to a podcast while I'm jogging with Willa, and I have my headphones on, and that's when I get how much screen time I had during the week. So a voice, a sweet woman from Apple, the robot, is telling me you were on this long, this is, more than last week, less than last week, or whatever it is, and I sort of cringe. But I needed to hear that, and it always jolts me into reality check. Come on, Liz. Get off social media today, connect with your family. I have 3 children. I have a wonderful husband. It's a good, healthy reminder.
Yep.
And it's not punitive. It's just this is what it is. Speaking of children and family and all that stuff, I know you're also a mom of 3. We both have boy-girl twins. We learned that just a bit ago. And then you have a younger daughter, and I have a younger son. You mentioned your parents, and that early in your career, your mother's health really impacted the direction you went. I have parents who, are in their 70s, living in Kansas City, who I don't see enough. But I think there are a lot of us in that situation that are juggling jobs and families and aging parents. Mm-hmm. I wonder if Apple is thinking about that. What's your approach there?
Yeah, it is something we've been thinking about. We introduced health sharing not too long ago. And really the purpose behind it was that so many of us are not just taking care of our kids, but we're taking care of our parents, or we're at least trying to stay up with our parents, because my parents live in New York, and I too don't get to see them as much as I'd like to. And what it was really that drove the development of that feature was, yes, the data is important. It's not that's a part of it, but it was really more the conversations that you're going to have around the data. And, a lot of times, I don't know about you, but sometimes I find that my parents, my father in particular, is too proud to want to talk about a health issue. Mm. But the fact that, we're sharing health data, it's just a nice kind of prompt for me to say, hey, what's going on with this? And that often leads to, I think, more meaningful health conversations. And we've actually heard this too from our users and our customers, is that the conversations that it has prompted has enabled conversations around what do you want when things are not going well for your health? And those are really important conversations to have with your loved ones, particularly your parents, which sometimes it's hard to tackle those topics. So the health sharing data allows you to securely share your data, and they can share theirs. They can choose to turn it off anytime. So if you are nagging your dad about something, or I'm nagging my dad about something, he can say, I don't want to do that anymore, and I'm going to stop sharing. And it's secure, encrypted on device again, encrypted end to end. But I think, again, the thing that we were really focused on was how can we enable really powerful conversations? And you get I also get my kids' movement data, which is, as you know, for children, it's so important for them to get out there and move at least 120 minutes a day. And many kids are not doing that as much anymore, especially post-pandemic. So just even that, and motivating that, and trying to get my kids to move around more and make sure they stay healthy, it's been a nice way to kind of instill conversations around health in a nice way in our family. And that was really the intention behind the team, the broader Apple team, thinking about it, is how do we allow people to share this data so we can have those meaningful conversations?
That's so awesome. My parents both wear Apple Watches. They don't share their data with me, but
got to get them to do it.
Yeah, I know. I might have them. My kids also do, and they are so proud, when they have been moving enough, and movement is huge in our family already. But I appreciate that it is the spark for conversations and allows us to talk about why physical activity, what it does for your mental health, why it's so good for your cells, your longevity, all the things, and it makes them curious.
It does. It does. And, it also allows you to have those conversations with your kids. Particularly, I find this is, again, going back to that topic of prevention, like, the AHA says like 80% of heart disease is preventable if you can work on lifestyle factors, right? So like, I think getting ahead of preventable causes of disease is so important. And if that can start at younger ages, that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, just to mom out for a little bit, you know, with your role in the healthcare space and in the technology space and having access to, what the future might look like and raising 3 young children at the same time, what are you thinking about as a mom in terms of setting a good example? Or like when you spark those conversations, what are you guys talking about at home?
It's such a good question. I think the biggest thing that I've focused on, and we started talking about this a little bit before, is how do you role model a healthy lifestyle? And that means everything from how you're moving, how much you're moving, trying different things and, in terms of nutrition and trying different things, having a growth mindset in terms of how you tackle your days and issues and struggles. And like, if you falter, we all do, and don't respond to something well, making sure that you have a conversation and reflect on how you can be better. And them seeing that you're open to talking about how you can actually improve, because I think it's really helpful for kids to realize that we all make mistakes and we have to figure out how to tackle that. And then also, probably the biggest thing from a health standpoint that I've been really focused on is teaching them that small little steps every day lead to overall big gains in health. And so you don't have to do everything perfectly every day, but if you're doing one thing for your health every day, whether that's eating healthy and eating the vegetables or getting out and moving, that's going to ultimately lead to a longer, healthier lifestyle. But also then layering in the impact and it has on your mental health. And so how movement changes and improves your mental health is something that we've spent a lot of time thinking about. And we do use we use the rings as a little fun thing that we do in the house to get them to be focused on that.
I agree with
you.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on modeling healthy behaviors. I feel like because of my role at Women's Health and the fact that I get to speak to experts like you and read all the studies and edit stories about this, it's like could not be more equipped to share my knowledge with my children, and I feel so lucky for that. I do model, I love fitness, and I try to connect the dots about look, my kids they know the days I didn't work out. They're like, you're dysregulated, mommy.
Same. We have the same conversation.
Go to the gym this morning.
We have the same.
But that's so cool that they know that, that they're connecting the mental health to the movement of your body. I will also say, just on a personal note, having, gone to therapy over the years and learned about my anxiety and managing stress and healthy tools for doing that, when I see my kids have a moment, this actually just happened this week. My daughter, Lucy, who's in 6th grade, she had an essay due at 4 p.m. She was at the school play and just forgot, because now they don't turn it in on paper. They press a submit button on their laptop. She forgot. And she's very much a perfectionist. I wonder where she got that. She came home and she was distraught, and it was like 8:30. She immediately submitted it. She was in tears. I was worried she was going to have a panic attack over this. And my heart sort of broke for her, but also broke for me because I was that kid too.
Right.
And I love my parents so much, but nobody told me, you can take some deep breaths. Let's activate your parasympathetic nervous system. I know I actually say things like that to my children. And kind of helped her through it, and it was like a life lesson about you're a human being who's going to make mistakes.
Yep.
You're not going to do it perfectly. Guess what, Lucy? More are coming. I make mistakes too. I do it every day, but we can get back up, and you can talk to your teacher and you can explain the situation. And, so it was really a learning moment. And it's kind of weird because I'm so into fitness and nutrition and health. But if anything, I think the value I can add for them right now is what I've learned about mental health, both in my own personal life, as well as from the stories that I edit and publish at Women's Health, and help them hopefully be kids who are growth mindset oriented, and who can reflect on what's physically happening in their bodies and maybe take some steps, whether it's breathing or movement or eating healthy foods, to be their best selves every day and to like fail, but then like get back up and try again.
Totally. And one of the other things that we spend a lot of time talking about is how to be more mindful and, you know, the use of meditation or the use of whatever tool that allows you to be more mindful. I mean, obviously, again, through the work at Apple, we've done a lot in the mindfulness space. You know, we have the Breathe app, which my kiddos find kind of helpful at moments to just kind of prompt them, but also just thinking about, you know, like the mindfulness meditation that we have available through Fitness Plus. There's a lot of things that we've done that I also try to learn from. I get to learn about that at work and bring that home, and that's kind of very special. The other thing I will just say is that we also try to model like how we use technology, particularly at home too. So, and again, we're not perfect, but really trying to be present, put the phone away, be intentional about how you use your technology and when you use it is something that we also talk a lot about, which I do think is an important part of your overall health as well.
Yes, we're the same, and often Matt, my husband, and I have to remind each other. But
Same.
yeah, it's true. Like if your phone's out during dinner and mommy's got an important email to respond to, what does that say to our kids? You know, so that's something I must admit that I am working on every single day.
Same here. So I totally get it. And my husband and I remind, and my kids do. They'll be like, "Mom," you know.
My kids do that too. Yeah, they'll call me out for sure. That's great. That means they're embracing
Totally.
it. Okay, so we're here. It's almost lunchtime, but I had a big morning this morning. I'm very much a morning person. I actually wrote a book called Own Your Morning. It's kind of a thing at Women's Health and for me personally. And I know you are too. Can you share with me how you own your morning? What is a healthy ritual, or what does that look like for you?
By the way, I love the fact that you did own your morning because I'm such a big believer in starting your day well. So I have a very specific ritual, and that's probably, you know, when you're traveling, it's how do you kind of replicate it? But there's a few things. There's about 3 things that I always do every morning that are really critical. So for me, first and foremost, it's coffee and prayer. So those
also
are
a big caffeine coffee person.
So my form of meditation for me is prayer. And so in the morning, the first thing that I do is I get up and do that. And then I actually turn my coffee machine on, then go pray, and then go grab my cup of coffee. And then I sit there for a little bit, just by myself. So I try to beat everybody getting up and, you know, take a moment just to kind of breathe, think about my day, be intentional about what I want to get done that day. I do look at email first thing in the morning after that period too, just to kind of have a sense of what's going on. And the other big one, which is going to sound kind of corny, but is a key part of my morning, is I take a few minutes to hug each child as they get up. And so each child will come in to where I sit down in the morning, and I have this like a little office area that they come into, and each one of them gets their own time with me for a few minutes each morning. And that is also incredibly a big part of my ritual. And then it's exercising. You know, I grab breakfast and then we'll do a quick workout or run or.
Oh my gosh, Sumbul, I love your morning.
But that is the special thing, and that I do not sacrifice at all. That is always my morning ritual. So
that's so cool. You've inspired me. I'm going to make it more of a moment with my kids. We're big huggers in our family.
Too.
Well, my husband, not so much. I'm quite emotive.
Same here. My husband, not so much, but I am. And so my kids, that's the part that my kids miss the most when I travel, actually. But we're big huggers, so.
Big hugger. And, you know, thankfully, I know they'll probably grow out of this, but my kids are still young enough that they'll come in for a big squeeze and let me kiss them and nuzzle their cheek for a minute and listen to how much I love them, and they'll say it back. But it's quick. And they're like, you know, popping over to get cereal for breakfast and this and that. I love that you have like a special few minutes with each of them. I'm going to try that. That's awesome. And a lot of what the book is about is finding your core values, what's important to you. And for me, family is one of them.
Yep.
Mornings are a rush. You got a lot to do before you head out the door and start your day. So if family is important to you, the book does not suggest like, call your mom and have a 15-minute conversation with this kid and this and that. It's the micro nods, the quick moments, which you're doing, which I love so much.
Well, and I love your idea on micro actions because that ties very well with kind of how we think about taking small steps every day. So how do we prompt you through our work to give you small steps every day, to whether it's to stand, whether it's to breathe, whether it's to move. that's really what we think a lot about. And so I love that concept of micro steps.
Yeah, it all counts and it all adds up. The cumulative effect is huge. All right, so we are approaching the end of our time together, and just to take us out, Sumbul, first of all, thank you so much. This has been really interesting. I thought I knew everything about Apple Watch and the iPhone, but no, I learned a lot today. I hope everybody else did as well. Can we look into the future? Can you tell us what's coming next? It could be about our kids. It could be something you want to share about Apple, something that you're personally working on. Take us into the future for a moment.
You know, I think the thing that we're focused on for the future is really continuing to, one, pull on the threads in the areas that you've seen us focus on. So, you know, women's health, we're very interested in that space, continuing to build our work in mobility and cardiovascular. But perhaps more broadly, really thinking about how can we find more ways to give you proactive empowerment to be healthy every day. And how do we do that? By, again, pulling on that thread of being really actionable insights that are grounded in the science. And so the honest truth is that we let the science guide us to where we're going to go. So a lot of times, you know, when people ask me that, the reality is we'll see what we learn in these 3 studies that we're doing. We're really focused on how do we continue to learn where we think there are truly evidence-based ways to make an impact when it comes to someone's overall health, and being focused on prevention and being proactive and taking those small steps every day. And so we're going to just continue to kind of hammer that point home. And you know, just one thing that I do want to call out is like everything we've put out, like even our sleep stages, for example, it was done on the largest data set that's ever been, it was developed based on the largest data set that's ever been done for a wearable. And so when we talk about the science, we're not just giving lip service to it. It's something we really believe in. And so a lot of times that's actually also really hard to say, like, what are you going to do in the future? Because you have to see how the science plays out. And we're just in the process of that. So really hopeful to have more impact in everyone's life in a more meaningful way. And we're going to continue to focus doing that.
Amazing. Like, final thought from me, I loved so much what you said about tiny, small micro steps. I hope everybody takes that away, whether it's in their professional world or in their own personal lives. I think a lot for me personally and what we do at Women's Health, and honestly, how I think about Apple, is also experiment and learn from science-backed, real, proven data and see what resonates with you. You know, not everybody is going to use the same features and tools in the exact same ways, but play with them, experiment, see what works in your life and what feels good, and then go with that, lean into that. And I think, you know, that's what we do for readers, is we show you a lot of science-backed, expert-based options, tips, and tools. It's almost choose your own adventure.
Totally.
You know, and it's like, I would love for readers, and I'm sure you would feel the same about Apple users, to try everything and use everything, but that's not realistic. Our lives are already quite full, and they look different. So like, take a little bit here, take a little bit there, see how it feels, see how it works, see if it makes you feel healthier and happier, see how it impacts your life, and then stick with that stuff, and then play and experiment a little bit more.
I totally agree with that. And that's what's fun about having that access to that data at your fingertips, is that, you know, and that's kind of what we talked about with like the highlights and trends. Like, really the purpose is that we don't put any judgment on the information we're giving you. We just want you to look at the information and kind of think about, what do I want to try differently? What did I learn from that? You know, what do I change, or what am I good with? And where should I celebrate myself? It's also meant to be opportunities to give yourself a pat on the back.
Yeah, give yourself credit. Gold star.
Credit for the work that you're doing. And so I totally agree with that. And that's your own, I love the choose your own adventure. That's exactly the way we think about it. I think there's a lot of insights that you can gain from looking at your data, but also realizing it's just a component of your health, and there's other elements that you have to be kind to yourself about and put that all into context too.
Amazing. I think that's a great place to end. Sumbul, thank you so much for being with us today. Audience, thank you for being here. Thank you. This was so fun. I learned a ton.
Thank you, Liz, so much for being such an amazing